哋咁樣嚇，我哋咁樣講得嘛？得嘛？點啊？佢都做啲咁樣嘅。
咁你睇你睇佢不如
有冇一個 output ray 出嚟有個位先？
可以知即係佢哋用線佢係咩雙定咩？雙其實可以好啦。使唔使 Android 可以？兩個應該冇關係。
早晨啊，你好，啱啱瞓醒覺。
可以佢講咩就咩可以靜音㗎嘛，係唔講佢可以。會受到傷害啊！
終於有份通知，恭喜你啊！恭喜你啊！
不如試一試 Sorry everyone, I will restart the meeting because there is some output problem, and I have to restart the meeting again. But just take 1 minute and join again. Sorry about that.
Let's turn it off then.
正路喺呢邊啊，呢邊咧佢哋有啲樣喺度，啲樣視像會議點樣諗？
唔可以睇條 link 咁樣。
我啱刪咗。要等一等。
而家試下就照常嘅上次都冇。琴日都試啦。係啊，睇唔睇而家？
你可以等一等啦。
有
有時技術上出錯。
咁咪你多得你唔少啦，喺度舉別睇嗰啲就係
即係你嗰個係即係，我係唔知點解撳呢個冇反應。
點解冇反應？
因為通常一撳就3部機啊嘛，3。
Zoom 我覺得唔得。
唔係，但係冇 Zoom 冇就係咁諗。
飲食嘢食嘢啊！
係有啊，唔係
食咗呢個
係啊，得佢有啦。
海鮮杯麵合味道。攞我呢部機咁樣掛喺度，之後就好似再長記者。
嗰個咩？
咁我哋開始咗先，跟住然後就咩咧？
阿希而家去攞個 stand。
希兒有冇？希兒應該係個行咗啦。
而家真係唔得。
都係唔得。
佢哋都係處理緊呢啲技術上嘅問題。落去呢邊先。落光喎呢邊。
嗯？點解唔得？
我都唔知㗎。係咪一定用 Chrome 啊？而家上次都係用 Chrome，之前都係用 Chrome。唔係，要用翻創嗰個。你撳呢個掣，只要 admin 而家就唔得。
喂嗱，我哋見到晒佢哋㗎咯喎。 嗰個係咪啊？嗰個係 Sam 嚟㗎。我乜黑到咁嘅樣嘅 Sam。喂，阿 Nick 阿 Nick，或者 Larry 聽到我講啊？阿 Nick。我做。阿 Larry。
The connection seems very weak, so I can only hear your voice very intimately.
I think that weak 邊個係 mute 邊個？
阿 Sam mute 咗。
哦，我講緊嘢嘛。Is that Sam there or is that Layla? Hi Layla. Or is that Sam?
That's Sam. This is Sam. I've got Layla trying. I think she might be experiencing a few issues as well, but hopefully it'll be resolved in a minute.
Okay, Sam, your face is very dark. We cannot see you. Can you get some light onto your face, please?
Yeah, I think it's the reflection from outside the window, so that's why. Yeah.
Yeah, get some light onto your face, please, Sam.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, sorry.
So who's going to speak first? Nick or Larry or Sam?
Layla will be here in a few minutes. She's going back to back on her schedule, so that's the problem. And I think she might be experiencing from the delay, so just trying to help with that now.
Okay, so we wait a few minutes 啊。點啊？
係咪 output line 啊？但係而家做緊。
咁你使唔使揾個 stand 啊？
用手揸兩個。
喂，有冇 stand 啊？我哋冇 stand，成個民主黨。
有 stand 但冇過嚟連接個手機嗰個架。
咩話？
即係佢可以連接到相機。
係，連接佢唔係當嚟手機。
你哋有冇人有多個 stand？
你係咪要呢個啊？呢隻嘅夾，我俾你啊。
你有多個 stand 啊？多謝你啊！你攞嚟啦，阿希利過嚟啦咁就過嚟啦，快啲啦！唔該晒你嚇，記住唔到我哋亂翻嚟啦。
OK。
我哋影相先好
啊。
影
相先。影相。
即係我諗。左邊。
中間嚟㗎。
右邊。OK。左邊。
係咯，點解會咁嘅？點算啊
？Okay, what is it? We're almost ready.
Yeah, hi Emily, we are already here.
Oh, is that Layla?
超過。
Oh, hi. Bravo. Just give us one more minute, okay, Layla, and then we will introduce you and ask you.
講下先，講下。
Yes, thanks for taking the time. I know it was a busy schedule this morning.
You too. That was great to see you.
So I think we are all.
Layla, we have a few reporters in Hong Kong, Hong Kong 01, Apple Daily, and there's one from
Germany.
An internet social media website.
There's one from Germany, there's Voice of America, and other social media. And there are many who are watching from their offices. So you've got the whole world in your feet, Layla. So I think we are ready now.
Oh, there's a lot of echo.
I know. I don't think it's from our side. Is it from your side? Larry?
I can, you're echoing. Just.
Is it better now?
Yeah, let me
I think what we do is when one person speaks, the others will shut up. I think it will be better. So are we all ready? EP, are you ready? Just a minute 嚇，得未啊？我哋嗰個，快啲整啦，唔好 OK 啦 ，OK 就 OK 嘅，真係 OK 嘅，得未？得未啊？得唔得？
咁樣好啲喎，個 YouTube。
可唔可以全9啊度？
但係嗰個夾唔夠長。
而家應該9啊度啦，係咪？
而家得未啊？
唔係打橫咗啊！而家喺個民主黨嘅 Facebook page。
即係點啊？要調翻轉啊？
要0加到0。
可唔可以0啊？
係咪碌咗嗰個？
即係真係成個俾我覺得
用手。
用手啦，用手啦，
係咯。
用手啦。即係鋪大嚟㗎。
Yeah, I think it's some issue with the live broadcast on the Facebook.
Yes, I'm very sorry. It should be ready in a minute.
Okay.
得唔得？Okay, so let's go. So, good afternoon, our friends in Hong Kong, and good morning for our friends in the UK, in London. And we are very happy and honored at the Democratic Party here to be having this online meeting with our friends from the Liberal Democrats in the UK. And of course, one of their chief speakers is Ms. Leila Moran of the MP and also spokesperson for the on foreign affairs for your party. So maybe without further ado, we invite Leila to say a few words to our friends in the media in Hong Kong and tell us what's happening in the UK regarding the Hong Kong bill. The second reading is on Friday and all the other developments. I think many Hong Kong people and media friends are interested. So over to you, Leila.
Well, first of all, thank you, Emily, so much for taking the time to meet with me and everyone here for organising this. Very much across the world, but nevertheless absolutely in solidarity. And I wanted to start by saying, we here in the UK, and this is a very much cross-party effort, and I'll come to this in a moment, but feel very strongly an affinity with the people of Hong Kong. My party, the Liberal Democrats, have for many, many decades now been close friends to those in Hong Kong, and we watch with horror, actually, at what is happening right now. We are deeply concerned by the turn the Communist People's Party has taken. The national security law has clearly undermined human rights in Hong Kong. And we feel, I certainly feel, and I know my colleagues feel, a real sense of duty to do what we can to help at this incredibly important time. My amazing colleague, Alistair Carmichael, has brought a bill to the House, and it's a fairly broad bill, and what it says is it reiterates that the United Kingdom has to do what it can to ensure adherence to the Sino-British Declaration, but also more practically, and we're very well aware that whilst the government has said that there is a route for people who have BNO passports to be able to settle in the UK if they want to, of course we know that many people simply don't want to do that. They'd rather have peace in Hong Kong in the first place, and I think that's what we have to continue to work towards. But I'm very well aware that many of the protesters are too young to have had BNO passport, or they, for whatever loophole, didn't think that it was needed, and so they weren't able to gain the necessary paperwork. And so what we want to also put in place is a lifeboat policy, a way that if there is anyone who finds themselves on the right side of democracy, but of course on the wrong side of the national security law, that there would be a way for them to come to the UK to seek sanctuary and for us to welcome them with open arms. And I think that there is broad support for this in the House. And I say I think, well, I know. We've had, for example, the former Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt sign up to Alistair Carmichael's bill. We have a coalition in the Houses of Parliament led by the Liberal Democrats, but very much side by side with the Conservative Party. And for those who have been following British politics at the moment, I have to tell you, this is maybe the one issue where we absolutely are seeing eye to eye across all the aisles of the Houses of Parliament. This is an extraordinary thing. And I would like to thank the Communist People's Party, Chinese People's Party, for doing that, because I think it's the one area where we're finding that we are absolutely aligned, and it is against them, and it is with you, and it is with democracy, and it is with our own sense of history weighing heavily on our own shoulders as a nation, saying we want to support you. So I'm delighted to have this meeting with you today, all of you. It's a great honor to do this. And I'm new in my post, and I suppose what I want to hear is how else can we help? We are creating these groups of people here in the UK. We are meeting with as many different organizations as we possibly can, including Hong Kong Watch. I met with Nathan Law. You know, we are trying our very best to get your voices heard on this side of the world, as well as helping to amplify your voice with yours. But what else can we do? Because I want to understand, what influence does Britain still have? Whilst it may be diminished perhaps in the eyes of some after recent years, we still have an important role to play, I think, in this particular area. What can we do to help? We are on your side. We want to help you.
Well, thank you very much, Leila, and I'm sure the Hong Kong people are very touched by the support that your party has given us, all the way back to, you know, the late Lord Paddy Ashdown, who has always been a very good friend of Hong Kong. And we hope that the UK government, the UK political parties, and the international community will continue to cast a watchful eye over Hong Kong and speak out for our struggle for democracy, for human rights, and the rule of law. And I have with me 3 young members of my party, Edith, Douglas, and Ramon, and maybe they will tell you what they hope, what they want your party to do, because Ramon has to leave early, so Ramon, you go ahead first.
Yeah, I think Leila has said very well, and that actually many Hong Kong young people suffer, and in the current policy, BNO policy right arrangement, actually many young people who are born after 1997 is not eligible to have the LIFO scheme. So what do you think the British government can offer more help for them? And yeah, what are your advices and the possibility of that?
Yeah. So what we are pushing for is for that scheme to be extended to anyone who needs it. I think the 97 cut-off in the current climate, especially given that many of the protesters are falling into the category of not qualifying, and yet they are the ones making the case for democracy in very much the spirit of what Paddy would have wanted, but also what Parliament would want and wants to see across the world. My own view is that the lifeboat policy should be expanded to include everyone who needs it, so not just those who are holders of the BNO specifically, but, you know, could we create a different type of route, a different visa, whatever it may be, so that people can come and seek the refuge, frankly, that they need right now, the security that they may need. However, as I said, I think at the beginning, and I'd love to hear from you, I've no doubt that many people would much rather not have to do this. You know, they would much rather not have to leave. They would much rather stay and be in their communities and be part of who they are and where they come from. And so whilst it's very important, I think, especially because it allows people to take political risks and not worry about, for example, as we've seen with the Hong Kong 12 that are being imprisoned in China right now, and there's been a lot of Twitter debate around that at the moment, and we're doing our best to raise the profile of them. But you need protection. If you're going to fight for democracy, you need protection. So I think it's right that the United Kingdom offers that protection. What we're trying to do is to get the government to understand that actually what they've offered, I'll be perfectly honest, I was pleasantly surprised. It was more than we were expecting, especially from a government that over the last few years has been actually a little bit, frankly, xenophobic in its immigration policies. But I'm delighted to say that they did do this, and I do think that they can be pushed further. And the way that we do it is by making them understand that it's the very people they need to protect that aren't actually being protected by what they've done, and that we can push it slightly further. So that's what we're trying to do.
Leila, I don't know whether you've read in the news a recent case of a Hong Kong Chinese university student, a woman who went to Germany to ask for political asylum, and she's been given political asylum in Germany. And the reason she did that was she's not a BNO passport holder, and and she had some harrowing experience in Germany. So if she had gone to the UK, maybe the situation would be better. But she's no BNO. So what do you think would happen for someone who doesn't have a BNO passport, young person turned up in the UK with that? What do you think will happen?
Well, I mean, we have an asylum system here that, to be perfectly honest, isn't fit for purpose, and the government itself has said that, and there's an enormous backlog. But the political side to this means that I think there would be a huge groundswell of support for that young person if that's what they felt that they needed to do. They would find that there would be MPs from across the House making the case for why they should be given asylum in that way. And I would very much hope that the government would grant them that asylum should they need it. And I obviously cannot speak for the government on this. I certainly can't speak for the Home Office. But I can say with some certainty that they would receive enormous support. Probably not just from the political class, but what I'm finding very interesting about this is I think a lot of ordinary British citizens really care deeply about this. When we, as a party, ran a campaign on this over the last 12 months, more than anything, more than Brexit, more than anything to do with coronavirus, Hong Kong came top of the list of things that our members wanted us to campaign on and care about. And I think you should know that that support isn't just among the political class, it's among ordinary people in this country. And I think that would be reflected. But it's true also to say that claiming asylum in any country is difficult. You know, we have a system here where we have no recourse to public funds, so they would need people who are already on the ground here to be able to pay for them. It's really, really difficult. And so what I want to see is that lifeboat policy just extended. Because if someone could come with the certainty of knowing that actually this would be a path to citizenship, which is what I also think needs to happen for everybody, then that would give them the certainty to be able to come, rather than worrying what's going to happen to me when I get there. Am I even going to be able to access the systems that I need to and navigate this very difficult path? Actually, let's make it much, much easier.
I think you're absolutely right in saying that actually the people want to stay in Hong Kong so long as they are free, they are safe, and they can, you know, express themselves and they can develop democracy. So that's one thing we hope Britain and the international community will help Hong Kong to ensure that our freedom, our safety and all that. But failing that, of course, some people, particularly young people or young families, they want to go because they want safety for their family members. So now I ask Edith, another of my young member, to tell you what she wants your party and the parliament to do. Edith?
Well, similar to what Ramon has said, there are a lot of young people come to me and said because they are born before 1997, but because the parents didn't get their BNO passport for them, because of no reason at all, because their parents are not aware or whatever reason, so they are born on a British territory, they are not granted a BNO, so they have no way to go to the UK now. Of course, they can try working holiday scheme. Of course, they can try to get a master course in the UK, but the path will be very, very difficult. And for some of the cases, like if they are trying to leave Hong Kong, you know, immediately for some reason, then they cannot turn up to the UK and stay. So we are trying to seek, you know, what are the visas options for this kind of young people. And I think this is a very concerned question in Hong Kong for now.
Mm-hmm. Well, the point you make is very well made, and I alluded to it earlier, which is that this government right now, unless there are special routes, which is what we want to try and create, actually to get a visa to get into the UK has become even more difficult over the last 5 years. And I have caseworkers who are in my office who specialize in this, and they tell me that it is getting more and more difficult to meet the criteria. You now have to have a minimum salary that is actually quite high. Until it can take a long, long time. We know that there is a resourcing issue in that department. And so I won't be able to advise, what's the best way. But one thing I will say is I do think it's very unfair that essentially this is a rich man's game. If you have the money to be able to do this in the first place, then that's great. And actually, if you have money, then it's likely you'll be able to show you have the minimum salary, or you'll be able to spend the money on a very expensive degree, master's degree course, or whatever it may be, in order to get access. But what I find regrettable is that actually a lot I know of the young people who have been making the positive case for democracy in Hong Kong against this national security law are people who don't have that kind of money. And so that's why I think even with the route that the Home Office has presented now, even for those who have B&O passports, it's not cheap. And so one of the things that we're trying to push for is for the costs of that to go down, but that also, if it was expanded, that it would be something that was available to an ordinary person, not just those who happen to have thousands of pounds sitting there waiting for this. And I know people, will do everything they can to find the money, especially if they need to feel safe and have safety. But I've no doubt that there will be many who find, actually not all the family is going to be able to go together. It may be that someone goes first and then the others come later, whichever way it would work. And I don't think it should just be for those who have the money. I think whoever needs safety should know that they can count on the United Kingdom to be safe. And we need to press the government to, at least from their end, reduce the fees. But then I guess from the other side is, to encourage civil society, both in the UK and in Hong Kong, to provide hardship funds for those who may need it.
Well, thank you, Leila. And I think the points that we just raised with you, I hope that if possible, when you take part in the debate in the House of Commons on Friday, you can tell your colleagues in Parliament that you have spoken to us, and these are some of the views of the Hong Kong people.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And Emily, as a commitment, because we're not sure if the bill's going to get time on Friday because of everything that's going on in the House right now. So it will be read, but the question is, will there even be time for speeches? And it looks unlikely. But I can guarantee that off the back of this conversation, everything that we raise in this conversation, we will write a letter relaying your questions and your desires to Dominic Raab. And at my first opportunity that I see him, I will raise these with him face to face as well.
That's very good. Thank you. And of course, there are journalists in the room, and in a minute, we'll invite them to ask questions. And also, there are people who are actually watching our meeting online, and I invite them to send in their questions to the Democratic Party Facebook. So in a minute, we'll read them out and for Leila to answer. But before that, I invite my other young member, Douglas, to ask you a question, Leila.
Yeah, thank you, Leila. And then,
Hello, Douglas.
Hello. As you may know, there are loads of youngsters who are arrested during the movement for the past few months, and also, there are now maybe some have already under the trial, or maybe there are some already sentenced. So some of the people are very concerned that if those people one day when they go to the UK, is there any problem for them, or is there will there be any obstacles to bar them to enter the UK?
Yeah. So actually, this is one of the unanswered questions in the current route for B&O passport holders, is that if they have been arrested, but it's a political arrest, then technically that's one of the ways that the UK could stop them from actually accessing that route. And it makes no sense because the route exists in order to protect those who are actually highest at risk, frankly, of being arrested and may have already been arrested. We are seeking those answers. We don't have a definitive ruling from the government on this, and actually, frankly, it's probably going to need testing. However, what I can tell you is from whenever I have heard even Dominic Raab speak about this in the House, certainly when I've heard Conservative colleagues speak about this in the House, who are the party of government at the moment, the intention of the current route is to make sure that those people would be protected, and I would hope that actually a dollop of common sense would also be applied at the same time, especially if that was the only arrest and that was the only blight against that person. And it may well be, for example, that the British government chooses to not recognise that as an arrest or to make a specific exemption for those kinds of arrests. I would feel, without putting words in the government's mouth, and I wouldn't dare do this, but I would feel, as I said earlier, very confident that if the Home Office started to push back, that we would get enormous support to overturn that and do that pretty quickly. But as soon as we get definitive answers to that, we will, of course, get back to you and make sure that you have the information. And we've got the connection now with Emily and everyone else in the Democratic Party, so I'd be very happy to share that, and we will continue to chase that.
Yes, thank you very much. So maybe let's ask the media now, because there are some journalists here. Any one of you, is
Sure.
any one of you want to ask Leila a question? Please, don't be shy.
I'm
搭埋嚟大聲埋嚟呢度。Which organization?
I'm Leo from Hong Kong 01.
Hong Kong 01.
Hello, Leo.
Leo.
Yeah, I want to ask, what is the current obstacle? What is the most difficulties with the bills you're going to propose and other proposals? What's the most difficult things you are currently facing? Right.
Well, I mean, I think it's like most legislatures across the world. We have coronavirus that we're dealing with right now, and we also have Brexit, because, you know, we like pain in the UK, it would seem. So what it means is that we are pushing huge amounts of legislation through the House all the time. And I think the biggest issue we're going to face with this bill is time. Even if the government did take it on wholesale, which is actually the first step, we need to get them to say publicly that they want to adopt the bill and they want to adopt these ideas. And we do that through, you know, political campaigning and garnering political support, of which I will say again, huge cross-party support for this. Very much in the best tradition, I think, of our UK parliaments, really, genuinely. But then it would take time to go through the House. And so that's why I think, you know, we need to, up until that point, get clarity on the current route, get the government to expand that route. These are things that my understanding is they can do quickly and they can do now, but then to also implore civil society to step up to the plate if needs be. If we find that there are individuals who, you know, come over and need, you know, financial support for a flat in the UK, for lawyers, whatever it may be, for them to navigate the system, we have to not rely on just one route. I think we need to start making the case to wider society now that this is really urgent, that there are people being arrested, that this could have a negative impact on their future unless we act now. And I do think that there is that support among the British public to help with that. And I look forward to working with Emily and others to see what we can do to raise the profile of this.
Thank you, Leila.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to ask Leila a question? The media? Actually, Leila, you know, because the scheme that the British government has announced, it will start next year in January.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, some people have already landed in the UK, and which is okay. But then, and some people may say, wow, come January, many people will rush to the UK. Do you think, what do you think the reception from the British public would be? Considering what you just said, that they are quite sympathetic, what do you envisage would happen if many people...
Well, I would very much hope. So I'm going to answer this in two parts. Firstly, with my hope, but secondly, with perhaps a word of caution. And I'll explain why in a moment. So first of all, I think any British person, when they understand what is happening in Hong Kong, when they understand the history of Hong Kong, and if they met a Hong Konger who was here because they needed political asylum because of what is happening in Hong Kong, it would be with open arms. And I can tell you that Oxford cannot wait to have you. You know, we are very much that kind of city. We are so have such open arms and are so welcoming. And I know that for all of the country, I can speak for all of the country when that would be the case. The only thing I would say, and I think this is just as an aside, British society more generally right now has been seeing incidences of a rise in tensions in our communities. And I think it is being driven partly by coronavirus and the inequality that's coming. But actually, if you look back a few years, it also came with Brexit. And so I would say, whilst I know that when people found out that people were from Hong Kong and this is why they were coming, I know that they would get a massive reception. I would also not want them to be under any illusions. You know, Britain is going through a bit of a societal turmoil at the moment. However, we are proud to remain, you know, the mother of all parliaments, somewhere where democracy is strong and continues to be strong, and somewhere where we do take our international obligations very seriously, and where we believe, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, no matter which side of the identity politics that does seem to be pervading here as it does in other Western democracies at the moment, whichever side you may be on, nevertheless, the international rule of law, human rights and social justice lies at the heart of every single British person. And so just to end, I mean, I can tell you from my own party's perspective, any of our members who can help you, they will. Any MP who you might email and ask for help, I'm certain they will. And if they don't, come to me and I'll make sure they do. You know, you will get support if you came. But we continue to find a way for that to be easy to do. We continue to try and answer the questions about the scheme, which exists still. We continue to try and fight for this to be a scheme that is accessible to absolutely everyone, not just those who can afford the scheme. And finally, we continue to try and put pressure from Parliament so that you don't have to use the scheme. And I do think that there is more that the British government can do, especially in the light of Taiwan, especially in the light of the Uyghurs. Now we're beginning to see what's happening in Inner Mongolia with some of the repeated behavior of them trying to stop them from learning their own language. We are seeing a pattern of behavior now from the Chinese government, not necessarily, I would even say, representative of all Chinese people, of course not, but the government itself has this strong arm mentality where it's flouting human rights. And I think we in the British Parliament are at the verge of saying no more. Human rights matters, the international rule of law matters. Yes, we want to trade with you, but it's not one or the other. It has to be both. Otherwise, we sacrifice the very basis and values on which our democracy is founded. And actually, that is worth more than any money and any trade could ever be. So I think there is a huge amount of support. And don't be shy, be brave. However, I really want more than anything else for you to be able to stay with your families, to stay with your friends, and to be safe and happy in Hong Kong. Because sure, as Emily's described and as others have described, I've no doubt that that's what you want too.
Yes, exactly. And to underline what you said, your experience of the views of your British people, because when I was in the UK earlier this year and also last year, I twice met with Sir Malcolm Rifkin, who is a former Tory foreign secretary. And he told me, he said he's spoken to a lot of people in the country. He said he hasn't met anyone who does not think Britain has a responsibility for Hong Kong. So I certainly hope that will be the case. And of course, I know British people like Hong Kong people because they think they're very hardworking, they are very innovative and all that. So anyway, Edith, do you have another question for Leila?
I think that there will be a lot to discuss, but I would have a question that if the British people, like what Leila has said, that mostly they are supporting Hong Kong people. Is this sentiment will be different after the coronavirus? You know, because the coronavirus has, of course, there is a huge impact on the economy. And so I'm not sure if the Europe or other countries or Britain has a very strong will to make more business with China, after the coronavirus, to make the economy to boost again. So I want to get a question here. Will there be any difference after the COVID-19?
What a fabulous question. Because I think, what a difficult question, because I think what your question actually points to is what are going to be the big geopolitical shifts that come out of this extraordinary moment that our entire world is going through. And what is very interesting, and I'm the chair of the all-party group on coronavirus in Parliament, and we're taking evidence regularly. And what is very clear is actually Western democracies have been behind in terms of their public health response to coronavirus compared to many in Asia. But perhaps partly because, you guys had SARS and you are more practiced at it, but also the cultural shifts that had to happen after the epidemics that you had before meant that you're better prepared, frankly, and we weren't. And so it's our countries that are having to play catch up. We don't have the testing, tracing, isolating system fully in place. We don't. And so as a result, and you may have seen, I don't know, we are now facing the potential for parts of the United Kingdom to be majorly restricted again, and there is even talk of a second national lockdown because the virus here is getting out of control again. And the result of that is a depressed economy. Meanwhile, those countries who did lock down very quickly, who acted very speedily, who were able to gear up their healthcare systems very fast, are already finding that their economies are thriving, and they are just waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. And what happens at that point is an imbalance, because what you'll have are economies that are performing very well versus, as you rightly point out, economies like the UK and across Western Europe, which are to varying degrees, but nevertheless on the whole, struggling compared to those economies in Asia. And of course, the big one, the big beast, is China. And so, yes, I do think that we will be wanting to trade with China. And actually, to be fair to my own party as well, we are liberal. We believe in a world where people trade with each other, because actually at the heart of trade is the value of cooperation, is the value of understanding each other, is the value of communication and creating understanding between you. So actually, I wouldn't want to advocate that we dial down trade with China, but I don't think it should be no strings trade. One of the things that many on the Conservative side of the House, and as you may be aware, the Liberal Democrats were not fans of Brexit, but the Conservative Party were. And what they say is actually this is an opportunity for us to be even more robust with our human rights clauses in any trade agreements that we might want to strike with other countries. And it's an opportunity for us to be even more stringent about that. And I think hand in hand with that desire to uphold human rights that we are seeing across the aisles, will come a system that is, I hope, welcoming to those who need sanctuary in the United Kingdom, who are fleeing those countries that are treating the international rule of law with impunity, which I'm sorry to say China is in certain cases, in particular with Hong Kong, but also the Uyghurs. So I do think there is a tension there. I think what a fabulous question. And I think, honestly, you could ask any lecturer in the world to give a lecture for an hour and they will not have a definitive answer for you on this. But nevertheless, despite the tension, I do think that ultimately the British people will do the right thing by the people of Hong Kong.
Thank you, Leila. We have a question from a journalist who has sent in on our Facebook, and Ramon will read it out.
Yeah,
which newspaper?
I got a question from the reporter of the Hong Kong Economic Journal, also related to the relationship between Britain and China as well. The question is, the Chinese believe that the passage of the bill is a violation of the Signal British Joint Declaration and is expected to vigorously counteract it. The British government may need to prepare for the worst and be willing to make big sacrifices. So how would you think the UK government should tackle this?
Well, that's very interesting. I mean, as to adherence to the Sino-British Declaration, I think that's a bit rich, given what they've been doing. So we'll just put that to one side, perhaps. But I do think that there is a path to be tread here. I think that there is a way that we can work with China. And as I said earlier, trade is important in fostering understanding. It's a way of opening dialogue. I've always believed that. I'm the daughter of a diplomat. We traveled the world with that very idea being at the heart of what we were trying to do. I do believe that when you talk to people, even if it's a difficult conversation, it's better than turning your back completely. But I don't think it should come without strings. And so, for example, let's take the Uyghur situation. Very recently, in a debate in the House, I started naming and shaming British companies that use supply chains that are reliant, Chinese supply chains that are reliant on the forced labor that is coming out of Xinjiang. So my, I've just lost my screen. I hope you can still see me.
Yeah, we can.
There we go. I don't know what just happened. Something happens with
because you mentioned some sensitive thing.
I think that there is actually consumer pressure that we can put here in the UK. And so I do think that China, like any other nation, and the Chinese government and Chinese companies, what they are trying to do is make a profit. They are trying to improve the standing of their own economy. They're also trying to find new footholds into new markets in Europe, of which, of course, UK is one of the G7. We will always be a market they will be interested in, albeit I regret that we don't have the same clout that we might have done before, being part of the European Union. But nevertheless, I do think China won't just dismiss Britain out of hand. And I would hope that they would see that it's in their interests to start to clean up their human rights record, because their consumers here in Britain will have something to say about that. And I have to say, you know, when I talked about things like H&M, IKEA, you know, a lot of the major companies who do electronics that people use all the time, like Dell, for example, and Apple, people were shocked that these companies were in some way, whether directly or indirectly, involved in these supply chains. And already I've had people say, well, I'm just not going to use them. And I think that kind of action really matters to these companies. And I think there's a lot we can do that doesn't just require legislation. And just as an aside, legislation is important, and of course the declaration is important, but as we know, it was actually quite poorly drafted, and that's one of the issues with it, is that it doesn't have much teeth. And so I think we need to, that doesn't mean, just because the declaration itself doesn't have much teeth, doesn't mean that we can't, doesn't mean that even every individual can't do something to help this. And I think the reason why I'm very keen to be pushing these supply chain issues as a way of holding China to account for its human rights record is because that is something that we can all do right now to help to make the situation better. By educating the British public on this, I think it raises awareness. I think by talking about one thing, you then can bring in something else. And very often, the situation that the Uyghurs find themselves in Xinjiang is then very quickly turned to another conversation as well. Look what they're doing there. And by the way, look what they're also doing in Hong Kong. It's not just in one place as a one-off. It is a policy that seems to be being enacted across many different parts of Asia right now by China. And the British public are beginning to understand that these things are connected, and they will vote with their money.
So Leila, have you or your party been engaging with the Chinese ambassador in London? Because he seems to be very active. He pops up on the BBC and other media very often. So have you been in dialogue with him and tell him your concerns?
So I haven't personally. I understand, and I'm a member of a group called IPAC, which is led by a Conservative in the House, and I understand they have been. And Alistair Carmichael has been on that group for some time, and I would have to check with Alistair if he himself has spoken to him. I have to say, I mean, he is almost famous in his own right, I think, in the UK now because of how much he pops up on some of our very famous BBC political programs like Andrew Marr, and his ability, it would seem, to be a gymnast and tie himself in knots. And it was very interesting that when I was very first in post and I started talking about the Uyghurs in particular, but I'll defer to Sam, who's in my office as well. They have been in touch with us, and they are very keen to put across their point of view, which we then, of course, check with other organisations, and to make sure that we have the full facts in front of us. So we are in dialogue, yes, and I would be very happy to meet with him to discuss these issues. However, I suspect that his mind might be made up at the moment.
Hi, Leila. And then there are some questions from the netizens. They're asking about if you guys know the process of the details about the BNOs for the Hong Kong people, and also they also concerned about if anything will be done by the January next year. Because of the coronavirus and the other things, that it might be hinder or the delay, have some delay on it.
Yeah, so I mean, everyone shares that concern right now, and it's not just coronavirus, it's also Brexit. We have a double whammy happening here in the UK. I do think, however, that it would be politically very bad for the government to have any delay with this. However, what might be sacrificed is the details behind the scheme, and as I said earlier, there are some details that really need to be sorted out. One thing I would say, and I'm working with Hong Kong Watch on this, and my office are very open to trying to find these questions. If there are people who are looking into this in real detail, a detail that I certainly don't have because I'm not going through the process and I'm not actively looking to go through the process, but I'm sure there are many individuals who will be. If you have questions, whilst I wouldn't be able to advise on individual cases because I wouldn't want to inadvertently give incorrect advice, but if there's questions, there are questions that I could put to the government through written questions in Parliament, for example, to find out, first of all, if there is an answer and you just missed it on a website somewhere. Secondly, if there isn't an answer, when do they expect the answer to come? And thirdly, it's possible that they themselves, with everything that's going on, coronavirus, Brexit, all the rest of it, haven't anticipated all the questions that people may have and all the details that may be needed from this. And actually, we'd be doing them a favour by raising these issues with them. So perhaps, and I don't know if it's something you'd be willing to do, if you could collate a few of those together, if there are questions like that, and send them to our office, and I'd be very happy to put those questions to the department and send you back the responses.
Yeah, of course. So maybe we can connect some questions or concerns from those Hong Kong people, and then maybe send you guys to put it to the Parliament or somewhere else.
Yeah, very happy to do that. And my advice would be the more specific, the better. So the more specific that they can be about, not general processes, because a lot of that will be sorted out closer to the time. But if there's a web page that's unclear, if there's a clause that people are reading that doesn't make sense, or there's something missing, there is a lot to this, I know, and we will then put that together with what Hong Kong Watch is looking at as well, because I know they have many of these questions at the same time, and any other organisations, and then we'll put them to the department and share all the responses with everybody.
Okay. So it's about the debate next Friday, the discussion next Friday. I think a lot of people concerned whether it will be passed or not, the Hong Kong bill. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
well, I think,
what do you think about it?
Yeah, so just to explain the procedure of what this is, so this is a private members bill, and occasionally they do get taken on by government and they are passed. I think it was already very positive, the amount of cross-party support we had on the bill. And at the moment, the way I would encourage you to think of the bill is it's more of a very strong campaigning tool within Parliament to encourage the government to then find ways for themselves to enact what is in the bill. So I would anticipate that what will happen is that probably the bill just won't get time on Friday because it's a relatively low down a list of a number of bills that will happen, and then it will be pushed the date to a further date, and then probably we would then have these conversations again, and every time the date of the bill comes up, it's another opportunity to say to the government, come on, just take this bill. And I think actually, in reality, there will be elements of this bill that could well be adopted actually very quickly by the government, and that's our aim as a party. Is I don't want them to wait. They don't have to take my homework. They can take parts of the homework. They can take someone else's homework. I really don't care if you're going to do the right thing. Just take it from wherever you can. And actually, we're using it very much in that sense. So I do suspect that Friday, unfortunately, I don't think it will surpass in that way. But nevertheless, don't feel that that's the end if that's what happens. There is a lot still to do. And as I say, the groundswell of support right now in the House for Hong Kong is just getting bigger. This is going to be that relationship, the more general question actually of the relationship between the UK and China, and then those who find themselves on the wrong side of these kinds of policies, wherever they may be, I think is going to be one of the central questions of foreign policy for the UK in the next few years. So actually, as a whole, I think this area is going to keep coming back. And then what I want to do within that is to be armed with the specific asks that I can make of government to make life easier for people now. Because whilst it's all very interesting to have high-level geopolitical conversations that academics may like in decades' time, as you know and I know, there are real people right now looking for solutions who are scared, who are worried, who are concerned for their safety, and what I'm focused on is actually finding solutions for them now. So we need to play both balls at the same time.
Yes, we certainly will remember that. And of course, we will always be very grateful to your party, which has been supporting this from day one. All the members, please give our regards and gratitude to your members of your party, and we are very, very happy. And it shows that if you stick to something, one day, suddenly it happens. So before we bring the meeting to a close, Leila, because we have been keeping you for an hour, although with Brexit, UK is no longer part of the European Union, but I'm sure you have heard remarks made by leaders of European countries because the Chinese foreign minister has been touring Europe the last few weeks. And I certainly hope your party will continue to engage with political parties and government of the EU, because they are also interested in many of the things that you talked about. So what do you think?
Absolutely.
How would you, outside the EU, how do you engage with them now?
Well, we have to, and even the government themselves, and as just to again restate the position of the Liberal Democrats, you know, we never wanted to leave in the first place. We ardently opposed the referendum the first time round. We tried very, very hard to get the government to see sense and allow people the final say on the deal afterwards. And even when I speak to my own constituents who did vote to leave the European Union, even in those constituents, it is, yes, we are heading off on our own independent path, but we do need to maintain a close relationship with those countries. And the government has said that several times. Sometimes, you know, you wonder, did they really mean it? But my job as an opposition MP is to hold them to account for their words. And it is in our obvious self-interest to where we can, particularly on foreign policy matters, speak with one voice. The other thing that we are continuing to do is to work with, you know, America if we can, Joe Biden. I think that will make a big difference. But in the absence of that, actually, we have a close relationship with the Canadians and others across the world who share our liberal democratic values. And that's the name of our party. It's very much at the core of what we want to see happen in terms of the way that Britain approaches the world. And there is that liberal democratic small l, small d strand in the United Kingdom that lies at the heart I think, of the British people. And I think we'd be pushing at an open door. So yes, open dialogue, positions that are working on that international stage, even though we've left the European Union, we haven't left Europe. And I think it's very wise for the British government to continue to remember that.
Okay, so very good, Leila. So thank you very much. We had a very good discussion in the last hour, and we hope we can keep closely in touch. We will.
I would love that very, very much. And all power to your elbow. We are there with you. We are by your side. Anything we can do. Thank you so much for speaking with me today.
And thank you to your colleagues Nick and Larry, who has been keeping in touch with us. So thank you very much, and stay in touch. And good luck to you in the UK.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Take care. Stay safe.
Bye-bye. Okay. 搞掂。係點啊 ，Larry？ 聽唔聽到啊 ？Larry 有冇嘢補充 ？Larry 有冇嘢補充啊？聽唔聽到？
暫時冇啊，暫時啦。Nick 有冇嘢補充 ？Nick 嗰邊有冇嘢補充？
阿 Nick 咧有冇啊？
Nick 你支咪用標咗，你支咪用係？
邊個標佢啊？佢自己開翻得唔得？
唔係佢要自己開翻嘅自己。
係咪有冇嘢補充你兩位？
都冇啦，係啊，不過最主要就係例如而家好多港人團體都會好 open 地去幫一啲如果香港有需要喺呢度生活或者手足咁啦需要幫助嘅，咁例如 Friends of Hong Kong 咁啦，咁其實大家都可以聯絡嘅。咁我哋雖然有限嘅資源啦，但係我哋而家都會 take care 緊一啲人去幫佢搞緊 assign 緊嘅。如果有需要嘅，大家都可以聯絡嘅。因為你哋嗰個新聞稿咧，頭先我都同你講，我哋就發咗俾新聞界嘅，咁所以咧佢哋都會知道。咁如果有啲人真係需要幫手咧，因為呢度都有啲聯絡方法啦，係咪啊？咁你哋係歡迎佢哋，即係邊啲人需要幫手聯絡你哋嘅，係咪啊？你係啊，絕對歡迎。例如回應翻之前question 就話會唔會英國人可能都未必太過歡迎一個大嘅移民潮咁啦。咁可能就係我哋香港人喺外國，例如喺英國呢邊嘅 association 要做嘅嘢就係幫助融入喺社區，同埋即係會問一個就係香港人可以為個社區去做乜，咁就從而可以即係抵消到一啲英國對香港人嘅焦慮啦。咁呢個就係各個團體，例如 Friends of Hong Kong 喺英國會經常性喺報章寫嘅文章，去移除呢啲嘅焦慮嘅係一啲嘅 proposal。OK， 呢啲有冇嘢想問啊？呢個有冇嘢？咁啊 OK 啦，喂，咁啊多謝晒你喎嚇。咁我哋時不時又要再聯絡下，咁樣開又會啊呢嚇。多謝晒你同埋啊 Larry 同埋 Leila 咯喎。OK， 好啦，多謝晒你。拜拜，拜拜。我食埋佢啦。OK， 多謝晒你哋嚇，冇問題啊嘛。OK， 唔該晒。你哋攞翻你哋自己啲咪啦嚇。同埋我哋最近嗰個頭先借咗個小姐嗰個，還翻嚇，還翻。唔該。